Hello and welcome to Summer School and your Spirituality and Dementia presentation. My name is Diane and I'm the Academy Lead Admiral Nurse. Alongside me I have Nikki Rowe, who's an Academy Admiral Nurse, and supporting we have Emma Wolverson, who's the Research Lead in our Research and Publications team. So the aim of today's session is to provide a space that encourages and supports discussion and shared learning on spirituality and dementia. The learning outcomes hopefully will allow you to increase your knowledge and understanding of spirituality and how it relates to people living with dementia. To be able to dispel the myths relating to spirituality and to explore how spirituality increases well-being for families living with dementia.
Thanks, Di. Just like everybody now to have a think about this question and use the chat box to share what you think. What gives your life meaning and purpose? Thanks. And a second question, if that were to be taken away and you couldn't tell anyone, how might you feel and react? Give you a couple seconds to answer that. Thank you.
Spirituality descends from the Latin term breath of life and is an important aspect of human nature. Spirituality provides individuals with a sense of meaning, purpose and hope, supporting connection in relationships with family, friends and the world around them. Spirituality is a worldview that suggests a dimension to life beyond what we experience on the sensory and physical levels. In practice, this might entail religious or cultural practices and beliefs surrounding a higher being, connection with others and the world as a whole, and/or the pursuit of self-improvement. Having a connection to some type of spiritual belief has been a source of comfort and relief for many people. Although spirituality is highly individual, its meaning is often shared and expressed in group activities such as church services and holiday rituals. Research has linked spirituality with well-being and health in the face of life challenges. However, research also identifies that there's an absence or a minimal presence of spiritual care in clinical practice guidelines, and especially for people living with dementia. Despite consistent evidence suggesting that this group of people do not experience a devaluation of their spiritual awareness, their beliefs or their values just because of their dementia diagnosis.
Why do we need to consider spirituality in dementia care? People living with dementia and their families will have many aspects of ill-being to contend with in their dementia journey, and anything that we can do to support well-being is a positive. If a person is spiritual or has spiritual practices in their life that enhance their well-being, then this remains the same if they develop a dementia. It's no different. Spirituality can play a huge role in well-being for a person who is spiritual and may be equally as important to other aspects of daily practices. Spiritual well-being is often described as feeling at peace, bringing a sense of comfort and contentedness. The opposite of this would be spiritual distress or ill-being, which could indicate an unresolved or unmet need. McSherry in 2006 tells us that supporting spirituality and spiritual needs in practice should be done on a person-centered needs basis and not based on assumptions by the healthcare practitioner. Spiritual practices need to be person-centred and as individual as any other aspect of dementia care. The whole point of spirituality is that we get to decide what it means for us. And this is very relevant in the video clip that we're going to share with you. I'd like to introduce Peter and Stephen. Peter is living with dementia and part of the Lived Experience Advisory Panel, otherwise known as LEAP. Stephen is an Admiral nurse working in Scotland. You will hear in the clip that spirituality isn't for everyone.
Hi, so my name's Stephen Bozich. I'm an Admiral nurse with Dementia UK, and I am going to be chatting to Peter, who I'll let introduce himself about his flying experiences living with dementia. So, Peter, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Peter Clark. I live in South Wales. I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 4 years ago. And I was then fed all sorts of gloom and doom by various people until my Admiral nurse arrived and explained that there was much more to life than all the gloom and doom. And since then, I've really, my diagnosis opened a whole pile of windows for me. Before it, I just thought I was getting old and there wasn't much I could do about it. But once it was pointed out it's just a disease, and you can then start thinking about what you can do about it.
Peter, that's lovely to hear, and it's nice because to see how you've embraced the other side of not it being doom and gloom and not allowing that to take over, and the experience with your own Admiral nurses kind of gave you that. And I think the thing that inspired me to be here today was when I heard that you'd learned to fly, and just wanted to really touch on that. How long have you? I suppose, how long have you been doing that for?
Well, it's about 11 months now. I think the first lesson was I had it done on the 11th of May. That was really a follow-on from the Admiral nurse as well, because he put me in touch with the DEEP group, who by various means I was then contacted by the Exeter, who have a My Life, My Goals project.
Okay.
And they came up with this idea that you ought to think of something you want to do and then plan to do it and do it. Well, I was already doing most of the things I wanted to do, but that prompted me to think of something else. So I thought, why don't I learn to fly? In fact, I thought, why don't I get a pilot's license? But I've toned it down since then. I just want to learn to fly, because the pilot's license you need too many other things that are not interesting, like navigation and meteorology and radio telephony and stuff like that.
I think just doing the flying itself sounds amazing. So, and I think my next question was going to ask about the prompting of it, but it sounds like you've explained that there. And I suppose, how many times have you been up then since in the last 11 months? Have you had the opportunity?
I think it's about 17 or 18 hours I've had.
Wow.
It's very difficult. It's very beautiful flying over the Gower, but I mean this is my aeroplane. Well,
that's what I was going to ask, to try and say. Yep. Oh, that's even better than
that's the one I fly.
Perfect.
It's called an Icarus.
An Icarus.
It's a German, obviously named by somebody who didn't know a lot about Greek mythology, but it's a microlight, so it doesn't fly in very bad conditions. So if the wind is too strong or the visibility is too low, or well, practically anything other than a fine sunny day, it won't fly. So although the Gower is a pretty beautiful place, it's also a very stormy and wet place as well. So you don't get a lot of days
I feel that up here, and it's the same in Scotland. So don't come up to Scotland to try it. And I suppose
Yeah.
when you are flying, how does that make you feel within yourself?
Well, first of all, there's a sense of achievement. One thing that me with dementia is doing something that most people without dementia don't do. And then there's actually this sense of accomplishment, actually being able to acquire new skills despite being told I'll never learn anything again once I got my diagnosis. So there's that. And then, well, there's the sheer pleasure of soaring over the countryside. And it's only around about 3,000 feet. So it's like being up a mountain and looking down on a village, which I always used to like to do in the days when I used to walk. I used to like climbing up and looking down on things. And then the chance to exercise control of the situation. Not only am I controlling the aircraft itself, but I'm deciding where it's going, how high it's going to fly, what speed it's going at. So, again, when you expect to have, you're sort of losing control of things and actually gaining control of new things. There was a secondary reason for flying, because I was a bit cheesed off with the DVLC demanding that I apply for my driving license every year, despite the fact that I'm the best driver in the house. She's not listening. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to present, next time they asked me for it, I wanted to present them with my pilot's license and say, well, look, I got a pilot's license. Why don't you just give me a driving license for life? But one of the things about getting a license or being able to fly, all I have to do is to have a driving license. So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation.
And I can hear how that's meaningful to you and how that's impacting on you, not with going for those driving tests every year. But it sounds so amazing to be up there. And I know the word spirituality to you can be, I know you don't like it, but I suppose a word that I've learned recently, or a definition, is that idea of breath of life. And I wonder if that, more than using the word spirituality, means anything when you hear that. I wondered.
What was the phrase you used?
Breath of life. I just wondered if that. No. Okay.
No, I'm a realist, and I always have been a realist. And things just happen, or they don't happen.
I can hear that, but I suppose what you've also done is your determination to have a purposeful and like achievement there as well, isn't it? To get up there and fly and kind of almost say that this is still me. And a word you used there about being in control, because sometimes, that idea of, losing that control can be there as well, but to be able to learn those new things, because we often get told that you can't when you have a dementia, but that's not true. Yeah. People can. It just takes a bit longer. But I just feel I feel like I want to go up in a plane with you now, because it just sounds like it does mean so much to you. Just thinking of your experiences as well, and thinking of mind, body, and soul, the kind of phrase of where the soul fits into that in regards to dementia. Is that something you think about? No.
I have not got a soul. Nobody has got a soul. People imagine they've got souls for some strange reasons of their own. It's much better to think for yourself. You don't need souls or gods or anything like that. Just look it out for yourself.
Yeah, and I can hear that as well, that just thinking, I can do this, and your positive attitude to life is definitely inspiring, Peter. And and to think it'll be your anniversary coming up soon of
yes,
in May of your flying as well. That's just amazing as well.
Yes, my next flight is going to be a circumnavigation of one of the big islands in the Bristol Channel.
Oh, what island will it be?
ever since I was about 10, I've wanted to go and see Steep Holm.
Oh.
Not with a huge burning desire, but just sort of, oh, well, if I get a chance, I'll go. But now, 70 years later, I'm about to go and go and fly around it.
Oh, that's amazing. And do people take like pictures and videos when you're doing it for you, so you have that memory? Do you get that opportunity?
I don't know. I'll take my camera. I might get a picture, I suppose. But
So you've got those, because it seems like something that really important for you as well to have that. But yeah, I'm just so inspired by what.
Normally, what I'm doing to try and preserve my memory, I write everything down as I'm doing it, and then I keep a diary, and I revise my diary the next day a couple of times to try and set it a bit.
And that can help with that recall, can't it? Just to keep keep you from on top.
Yeah, the thing, as I understand it, the memories are in there still. It's just getting them out is the problem.
Yeah.
So as long as I've written down my feelings, then although I've forgotten about it, once I read about it, it brings the memory back out because it's all in there.
Yeah, that's kind of a trigger for your memory, then, isn't it? To kind of keep it there. Yeah, and then that will hopefully help just with that to go into that long-term part of your memories as well, which just sounds amazing.
If your spirituality helps you, that's fine, but it doesn't. I don't need it.
I suppose it's what we all take from it, isn't it? So, and it's we're not here to say this is what you have to or this is what you don't. So yeah. But I just think hearing what you're doing with your flying is just amazing, and I think I'd love to see a video of you kind of doing your flying, or come and be maybe not a co-pilot, but in the kind of seat beside you. So, but yeah, it would be yeah. Yeah. But I thank you for letting me have the opportunity today to do this.
No, I'm glad to do anything to help the Admiral nurses along.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's good. It's just lovely for me to have been asked as well to do it. Yeah, yeah.
You're obviously chosen for your compatible hairstyles.
Yeah. So as we don't clash. I've been shaving my head for a good few years. It's just yeah, just as well I suit it, like yourself.
Okay, now we're going to do some myth busting. So I'd like you to find your reactions icon. For me, it's at the very top of the screen. If you click on that icon, we're going to ask you to look for two of the reactions. One of them is the thumbs up, which suggests that you agree with the myth. And the other one is the surprised face emoji, which means that you disagree with the myth. I'm sure you get the gist. So the first one then, the first myth, spirituality is the same as religion. If you agree, you use the thumbs up, and if you disagree, you use the surprise face. Okay, it's disagree, so the surprised face wins. So they often overlap, and many people think that they're the same, but actually they're not. You can be spiritual without being religious. Our next slide offers clarity on that. So our next myth is spirituality is about spirits or ghosts. And that's a no, definitely. People often become more spiritual towards the end of their lives. That's a possibility, but not necessarily. So both of the reactions would work for this one. End-of-life practices often concentrate on spirituality, but many people are spiritual throughout their lives. And again, we're going to discuss that further in the presentation when we look at end-of-life care. Spirituality is about your soul. That's a yes, a definite thumbs up, although this is a deeply personal belief. Spirituality brings purpose to a person's life. That's a definite yes, thumbs up. Now we're going to hear from Reverend Sue Crichton, who will discuss spirituality and religion.
My name's Reverend Sue Crichton, and I'm an ordained minister in the Methodist Church, and therefore a practicing Christian. And I wanted to share something with you about spirituality and religion. And when I consider spirituality and religion, what I think about is the fact that not everyone is religious, not everyone practices a religion, but actually everyone is spiritual and everyone has a spirituality. And that spirituality means that we are people with an inner self, with a soul, a spirit. And that spirit within each of us wants to connect often with something bigger than ourselves, wants to find a sense of interconnectedness. That spiritual life that we all have means that many of us will feed that spirituality, feed our souls, maybe through a connection with nature. So for someone, they may find beauty and connection in walking in a forest, in the sound of the sea, in birdsong. It may be that some feel really connected to particular forms of art, or maybe to music. There are many of us who have probably heard a particular piece of music or song, and we've really felt that somehow that has touched our heart, our spirit. And it's really important that we recognise that everybody is spiritual, that everybody is seeking for that meaning and purpose in their lives. An individual quest, really, with questions asking, who am I? What is important to me? What is the meaning of my life? Religion is similar, but it finds that spirituality finds its expression in something more organised, in a faith, in a particular figure as part of that faith. So in the Christian faith, it's Jesus. In the Muslim faith, it's Muhammad. And so there will be different figures that we connect to. There will be a community of faith that religious people connect to. And there will be certain rituals and prayers, external rituals that people of faith are involved in. I recently supported someone in my church who was in hospital, and her dementia with Lewy bodies had really progressed. And she was at a stage where she was not really communicating very, very well, not communicating effectively, where she was eating and drinking very little. And there was sometimes very little recognition of those around her. But when I played Christian hymns, her favourite Christian hymns, there was recognition, and she would be mouthing those hymns as they played. And then when I prayed a familiar prayer, the Lord's Prayer, and said Amen at the end, she was able to join in and say Amen. So for somebody who is religious, that familiarity, those familiar songs, those familiar prayers or rituals would be really important. So for somebody who's a Muslim, it may be that a reading from the Quran, or if there's a particular prayer that they would have heard at mosque. For somebody of the Jewish faith, again, there may be a prayer or a ritual or something that is very meaningful to them in their faith that will really help to connect with them that they can connect to, even in their dementia. And the same with spirituality. If we find out about an individual, if we discover what was important to them, what is important to them, whether it's music, art, nature, theatre, whatever it might be, a particular reading or poem, then if we're able to access those things and share them with the person, then there may be something that in their dementia they can connect to, something that still feeds their soul, feeds their spirit. And so I hope that that's helpful for us to explore that everybody is spiritual and everybody has a connectedness, wants to have a connectedness, a spiritual connectedness of some kind. And others may channel that spirituality through something more organised, like a particular faith or religion.
Spiritual care is an important part of palliative care. So having a terminal illness often leads people to think about their lives in new ways, and their spiritual needs may change. All health and social care professionals can help explore the patient's spiritual needs and identify when someone might need more support. It's about knowing the individual. It's about knowing who they are, what's important to them, what are their likes and their dislikes. This can often be done through having those advanced care planning conversations. End-of-life care is deeply personal, and it often brings up questions about meaning, connection and comfort. For many patients and their families, spirituality becomes a key source of strength during this time. Spirituality during end-of-life care can be expressed in various ways. Prayer, rituals and connection to nature often do provide comfort and peace. Legacy activities like writing letters or creating keepsakes help patients to often leave a meaningful impact. It's important to honour each individual's unique spiritual practices and beliefs. Providing spiritual support doesn't necessarily require any expertise. It starts just by being present, by listening, by sitting, and by respecting each person's wishes. Now, this can be done if you create a safe space for sharing. Encourage open conversations about beliefs, memories, or practices that bring comfort without judgment or assumptions. Try and support with facilitating spiritual practices, so maybe help by arranging clergy visits, providing access to meaningful books or resources, or setting aside a time for quiet moments. Be mindful with the individual and be present. Sometimes simply sitting beside your loved one or your patient, holding their hand or sharing a cherished memory can create a spiritual connection. Many hospice facilities incorporate spirituality into their care plans through chaplains, meditation and end-of-life rituals. Families are also supported with grief counselling and bereavement services. Now, this approach recognises that end-of-life care does go beyond the physical health, and it includes the emotion, the mental and the spiritual needs of that individual. By addressing all of these layers, hospice care can provide compassionate, holistic support. It's about honouring the spirit at the end of life. As mentioned previously, spirituality is as unique as the individual who seeks it. And by respecting and nurturing the essential role of spirituality in end-of-life care, caregivers and families can provide dignity, comfort and love during a profoundly personal time.
Some families share a belief in something greater than themselves. These shared values can give families purpose and help them unite on goals. Spirituality can be a powerful source of strength for some families. And as with all aspects of spiritual practice, this is individual. Many of you will be familiar with the work of Nolan and the Senses framework on relationship-centered care. And we're going to put that framework into the chat box as a resource. Nolan suggests that relationship-centered care will only work if everyone within the relationship is considered. Nolan et al. 2002 tells us that relationship-centered care promotes a rather more inclusive vision of dementia care practice and research. It recognises that living with dementia is not about quality of life, but rather quality of lives. You will see from the Senses framework that Nolan suggests that all relationships need to follow these 6 senses to thrive. First of all, there's belonging, where people feel part of things and they can maintain relationships and develop connections. Then there's purpose, where people feel that they can contribute and have something meaningful to aim for. Achievement, where people work towards their goals and see that their efforts are recognised and valued. There's security, where people feel physically and psychologically safe. Significance, where people feel that they matter and others acknowledge them for who they are. And lastly, continuity, where life history is valued and care is planned and delivered consistent with wishes and preferences. Nolan says that good dementia care can only be delivered if all senses are experienced by all people within that relationship. Next, you're going to hear what spirituality means to me. What spirituality means to me. I find purpose in my garden. It's only small, but I love being on my own with my plants and flowers. For me, it's a sensory experience. In early spring, I like to feel the spring bulbs that are just peeping through the soil. In the summer, I like to see my hydrangea blooms grow big and fluffy. Then in autumn, I love to see my acer leaves turn bright red, then fade to brown and gently die away. In winter, I love to smell frosty mornings and hear the garden birds who are grateful for a feed. Being in my garden makes me feel grounded and aligned to my ancestors who were all keen gardeners. I love the rhythm and consistency of the seasons, the knowledge that there's a cycle and whatever else is happening in the world, it continues. If ever I feel unsure, I go into my garden and feel the earth beneath my feet and know that it is all well. This is what gives me life.
So far, we've discussed spirituality, meaning breath of life, spirituality and dementia, spirituality, religion, end-of-life care, and the family. But there is no real consensus to what definition is all about. But McSherry and Smith in 2012 have presented a definition that is related to people living with dementia. They say it's a universal, deeply personal and individual. It goes beyond formal notions of ritual or religious practice to encompass the unique capacity of each individual. It is at the core and essence of who we are, that spark which permeates the entire fabric of the person and demands that we are all worthy of dignity and respect. It transcends intellectual capability, elevating the status of all humanity to that of the sacred. There are many spiritual assessment tools available. So the two here, the FICA and the HOPE, are two of the most common tools that are used, and they can be used when assessing somebody's spiritual needs, when doing that holistic assessment. The fika is about faith and beliefs, importance and influence of those beliefs. It's about community, and it's about how to address those care issues. The hope assessment tool looks at what are your sources of hope, strength, comfort and peace. It's about organised religion. So do you have a religion or a faith? How important is this religion and faith to you? It's about personal spirituality and practices. So do you have a personal spiritual belief that is separate to an organised religion? And what are they? On what aspects of your spirituality or spiritual practices do you find most helpful to you personally? And the last one is what effects on medical care and end-of-life issues? So has your illness stopped you doing things that give your life meaning and purpose? And are there any specific practices that we should know about you when we care for you? I'm now going to hand over to Emma.
So what spiritual support interventions exist for people with dementia and carers? We conducted a literature review to look at published research studies that had tested spiritual support interventions. We found 12 international research studies that supported people with dementia across the trajectory. We also spoke to people with dementia and their carers about the interventions that we'd found to get their views. Let me tell you a little about the interventions we found. We found 3 studies that had designed interventions to be delivered directly to people with dementia. 2 were in residential care and 1 was in the community. One study combined spiritual care with music therapy in a weekly group, and the other 2 focused on spiritual reminiscence. This was a group reminiscence, but where the focus was on telling one's life story with an emphasis on meaning and purpose. The reminiscence sessions included singing, storytelling, and arts-based activities. We only found 1 intervention for family carers. This was an adapted cognitive behaviour therapy, CBT, which included elements of spiritual counselling. The intervention was targeted to carers who were depressed, and the outcomes were promising. There was a group of interventions that created tools designed to help professionals discuss and assess individuals' spiritual support needs. One is the Diamond Conversation tool, which was designed for use in palliative care and has been adapted specifically for those with dementia. The other is the Wellhead Toolkit, which provides structured questions to look at meaning and purpose in life. The next group of interventions looked at adapting residential care environments to provide spiritual support. This included practical elements such as linking to local parish activities, spiritual TV and radio programmes, music, prayer rooms, art and time in nature. The studies emphasised the importance of a whole organisation approach that fosters growth and flourishing. Finally, studies have looked at how to provide culturally appropriate worship for the Christian African American community with dementia. The studies provide recommendations on making church services accessible and welcoming to people with dementia and carers. In discussing the findings with people with dementia and carers, there was a strong sense that spiritual support should be multifaceted and personalised, because spirituality means different things for different people. Information about spiritual support should be accessible to both those diagnosed and their carers. The people we spoke to emphasised the importance of creative activities, such as art, music, and time in nature for meaningful engagement and emotional relief. It's crucial to advertise the specific aspects of spiritual sessions to ensure people know what to expect and avoid the imposition of potentially unwanted practices like prayer during music therapy sessions. the group felt that future research should focus on the role of art, counselling, and helping individuals in meeting their goals to ensure a sense of meaning in life.
We're all aware of the challenges of working in dementia care. So I'm going to ask you to use the chat box and have a think about how can spirituality be part of self-care. Feel free to share how you practice this for restoration and self-compassion. Thank you, and feel free to keep sharing that. We have got a couple of slides of reference lists. And now we're going to have some time for any questions or comments you've got to make. So please pop those in the chat box as well. Thank you.